I ask you this simple question. Who is more powerful than the President of the United States? Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon. We're in deep trouble, friends. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance.
Welcome to the program, friend. If you are a regular watcher of this TV show in various markets around the country, you know that for some time I have said if I was advising President Trump, I would tell him start his own network, get his own platform, compete with these people. Well, now, it may be a fait accompli. He only has days left in the presidency, and he has been shut off. This is so mind-boggling to me. A few years ago, Google defunded the vast majority of conservative right-wing programs that were getting ad revenue on their platform. I remember seeing a Volvo commercial air on one of my shows. That was not to be. So we have a situation right now where by many accounts, well, we know that there was voter fraud. All right, we don't know if it was enough voter fraud in the 5 states in question to actually steal the election. We may never know. We'll see. But we do know that as a result of what happened in the Capitol on the 6th, they're blaming President Trump. They're blaming the right wing. I don't have to go over the hypocrisy and the riots in the summer, but they shut off the President of the United States via Twitter. 75 million people. We could call President Trump the Twitter president because he was able to circumvent CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, the New York Times, and the Washington Times. He was able to circumvent AP and communicate directly with little tweets to 75 million people. It's gone. What they're trying to do is create an old world scenario where only these 5 or 6 news sources are legitimate. Now, I'm old enough to remember the days when CNN started. When I was in the news, and I was in the news a lot, okay? You know, in fact, take a picture and show the people. So these 2 doors that you're looking at are a fingernail clipping of the amount of press that I have gotten in every major periodical in this country, on every major network. And I remember the days when we wanted CBS and the New York Times to cover us. And then with the growth of cable news, we were able to get other news coverage. But being able to reach people through the media with our message was key to what we did. So we would focus on getting in the 3 major TV networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, and then CNN, and then later Fox, much later Fox was added to that. And then, of course, to be in the New York Times, Washington Post, and other major local papers around the country when we would go there. And I was interviewed by Dan Rather, Connie Chung, Leslie Stahl, and I was able to reach hundreds of millions of people, not just in America, but around the world, through the media. Then came not just cable news, which was, it changed the landscape, but then came the internet. And people thought, wow, we can finally circumvent the illegitimate coverage of news events through the internet. And people were so excited. And then came, there's a nickname for it. They don't call it Armageddon. I don't remember what, Defundageddon or something, where they defunded all these programs. But now they're turning off the spigot for data. Now, I've seen different and heard different numbers, so I don't know what is true, but evidently Twitter not only canceled President Trump's account, but maybe 10,000 other accounts that were closely associated with him, retweeting and communicating conservative ideals. And now, you must know, Parler has been shut off. In a 48-hour window, a platform with 20 million people growing by leaps and bounds instantly was shut off by Google, by Amazon, and by Apple. Gone. It's gone. Now they're suing and they're trying to be heard again. But we're in a situation where big tech, which many of us foolishly thought would be a way that we could circumvent the false narratives of the major news networks out of New York City and a little bit out of DC. We thought we could circumvent that. And now they've shut it off. They're clamping down. They're eliminating it. Think of all the Facebook accounts that have been canceled. Think of all the 3 strikes and you're out that YouTube has done. They're pushing us, they're herding us into a situation where we are going back to the days when it was ABC, CBS, NBC, and now Fox, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, and Associated Press, which is a shell of what it used to be. But New York Times is still the tail that wags the dog for all media. When the Times ignores it, it gets ignored. When the Times reports it, it gets reported. The difference between now and when I started my journey 35, more than that, years ago, in the press, a lot, interviewed by Chris Matthews, the journey is different because the people who run these news organizations now are filled with malice and lies and hatred, unlike anything that Dan Rather ever thought of. I did a one-on-one interview with Dan Rather. He was polite. He let me talk. What I said made it on the air. Those days are gone. So we're in a situation now where the Harris-Biden presidency can expect full protection from a media mob, from a godless cabal of people that are as committed to evil propaganda as many villains in history ever were. We're in for real trouble, people. Real trouble. And what I want to talk about when I come back, you can guess, we're getting what we deserve. I'll be right back. Welcome back, friend. Now, in a minute, I'm going to talk about Joe Biden and about Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire. But first, we're getting what we deserve. Now, there's people howling, and I understand it. I had my Facebook account canceled a few years ago because of my work regarding Islam. Now, mind you, I'm a scholar, literally a scholar. I have a master's degree in international terrorism. And they shut me off. I know what I'm talking about. They don't know what they're talking about, and they shut me off. So I get it. People are howling. Listen, I have a rebuke, and I'm going to be very clear. And I don't mean to be unkind, but I mean to be clear, and you need to hear this. You people that are crying and whining about free speech getting shut off, why do you care? You haven't used yours. You haven't used your free speech. You haven't decried the murder of babies. You haven't gone on the air and said it's a sin to vote for Joe Biden, that it's treachery against God, Judas-level treachery, to support somebody who has promised to use our tax money to murder innocent people. You didn't use your free speech. So how dare you whine and complain right now? You avoided controversy. You didn't want to be labeled as an extremist. You were worried about your donor base. You were worried about offending people and the backlash that you would get. You didn't want bad press. You saw what happened to people who you don't even really like Alex Jones or any number of people that were the focal point of hatred of the media. They lasered these people out. They're gone in many sectors, just gone. And then, because of your appeasement, your silence, they're now turning their guns on others. So you can cry and you can whine, but you didn't use your free speech. You bowed the knee to the tax exempt status. You didn't say it was evil to vote for one person and it was that we have an obligation to defend the babies with our vote. Or if you did even remotely say it, you pulled your punch. And let's go a step further with these so-called solemn assemblies and we've repented and we're repenting for the nation. You're repenting for the wrong sins. The sin to be repented of is the love of reputation, the silence regarding the slaughter of babies, the sin of lumping abortion with 10 other sins. Yeah, it's a sin to not accurately divide the word of truth, to not accurately determine and to declare that some sins are worse than others. Some sins demand the justice of God and the judgment of God. Other sins don't. It's just that simple. Listen, covetousness is a sin. You could covet what I have, I could covet what you have, and it all happens inside our hearts. There's no criminal punishment for that in the law, either the law of God or man's law. And it doesn't bring down the judgment of God. It's a personal struggle that we go through. But when you talk about the silence of the Christian community, Catholics, bishops, evangelical superstars, TV preachers, radio preachers, go through your Christian radio dial. Go through in your brain. You know the networks. How many of those preachers, talk show hosts, did you hear say it is a sin to vote for Joe Biden? And here's why. The theology of it is sound, okay? How many did you hear? Probably could count on one hand. And listen, you could say, oh, well, I got letters. I'm not talking about letters. I'm talking about broadcast time. They're shutting down the ability of people to communicate, starting with the President of the United States, shutting down the ability to communicate to people. Did you use your ability? People, I'm going to say one more thing, and this is really important. Wake up. Stop being deluded and stop wasting your money and your time with people that are false prophets and that are money-grubbing, scandal-ridden. And I don't mean moral scandal. I mean that they use the hot-button issues to raise money, but then they don't really deliver the goods. Okay? I'm going to tell you a story when I come back about meeting with James Dobson and his board. Okay? You're going to love this story. Don't go away. Welcome back, friend. If you are a student of history, I encourage you to read the book, The Last Lion Alone, by William Manchester. In my opinion, it is the single most important book that a person in leadership can read outside of the Bible. If you trust my judgment, you see these books behind me? These aren't props, okay? I take reading and writing books, which I am an author, I take it seriously. William Manchester is the author, The Last Lion Alone. It's a book about Winston Churchill, his years in the wilderness from 1932 to 1940. Find the book and read it. Because you'll understand what appeasement is all about and what it means to have your voice shut down and belittled and isolated and marginalized. That's what's going on right now. It's what happened to Churchill, and it's what helped pave the way for Adolf Hitler. The major news periodicals in England did everything in their power to silence Churchill because he was warning, screaming his lungs out, that Churchill is going to drive all of Europe into another world war. And they didn't want to hear it. But Churchill didn't blink. He never shut up. All right, let's go backwards in time. I don't remember if it was 89 or 90. I was a pretty hot item at the time, young, bold, brash, on the news like crazy, and being interviewed by everyone and their brother, including James Dobson, who's a very good man. And they had me come and they asked me to speak to their entire board. So I'm there, and I said to them, how long will you be silent during election cycles? I said, it's like you have this huge battleship with all these guns, and when the war breaks out, you stay in the dock. Your guns are silent. Because of your 501c3 tax exempt, you can't get involved in politics. Bridle, shackles that you've put on. I said, have a division of 501c4. Make a for-profit corporation, create a trust that the radio show is the voice of. They could have split the organization and had a legal entity that could speak about politics on the air. They wouldn't do it. And so I went after different people. I've done it. You know, this is part of why I'm persona non grata with so many folks. I've said, look, 92 came, Bill Clinton was elected. 96 came, he was reelected. And major Christian ministries who despised what Clinton stood for refused to say the truth and to speak the truth. God save us. Christ save us. I remember speaking to his whole staff, 700 people. They gathered everyone in a room and had me speak to them. Just the board was like 25, 30 people. Then 700 people. And I talked to them about Winston Churchill. And Dr. Dobson got me aside and said, I love Churchill. He's one of my favorite people. We've been losing the country steadily because of a lack of courageous, clear thinking, clear speaking men. Yes, women as well, but men, particularly men. By virtue of the Catholic Church's position that only men can be bishops and priests and deacons, by virtue of other denominations that predominantly have men in leadership roles, it has been a crisis of male courage that has gotten us into this mess. When we come back, we're going to talk about King Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians, judgment, and resistance. Don't go away. Some of you are still holding out hope that President Trump is going to remain our president after January 20th. He's not. He is not. This is a delusion. There are tweets, things flying across my computer, my phone about the military is going to intervene. Really? This is a delusion. It is not true. These people are lying. And they're giving good people false hope. And so when it all happens, the grief and the shock is going to hit people who should have been grieved and shocked in early November and now preparing to resist. This is the beginning of judgment. It is the beginning of sorrows. And judgment begins at the house of God. Remember that. The book of Ezekiel, it started with the temple. Peter wrote, judgment begins at the house of God. So the church will be judged first in America, and they will take away our right to speech. And then a handful of people are going to be made examples. Maybe I'll be one of them. We'll see. So Nebuchadnezzar came, the king of the Babylonians. The Babylonian Empire came, and God kept warning the people, I'm going to bring them against you. And God said, I'm bringing the worst of nations against you. They were the worst people, all right? They were evil. They were just evil, barbaric people. But God said, I'm using them to punish you. Now, I believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the judgment of God. What we see going on right now with the clamping down of speech, that's the judgment of God. But when Nebuchadnezzar prevailed and the Babylonians basically leveled Jerusalem and destroyed the temple, guess what fruit it had? Child killing was obliterated. The overarching sin that Jeremiah and Ezekiel kept talking about was the shedding of innocent blood. Once Jerusalem was destroyed, the temple was leveled, the shedding of innocent blood ended from that day to this. The cure happened. Judgment came to obliterate child killing. Joe Biden has promised more dead babies. It's not going to obliterate child killing. So the judgment is beginning now, like the first captivity of the articles of the temple. So we have to resist Biden's agenda to kill children, which is evil, and then we're also going to endure the judgment of God in these first stages. How this ends is in part up to you and I and the fruits of repentance that we bring forth.